You can do the opening.
And we are live once again. Welcome everyone to Coffee Talk with Julie and Nate. This is episode 28. We've adjusted to the daylight savings situation. So, I mean, one of us has. So yeah, here we are. Yes.
Although it's just easier for me. Thank you so much.
Yes. So hi, how you doing?
Me, I'm fabulous. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. Yeah, it's gotten a lot colder here. It was like 34 maybe. I'm trying to do the math.
It was
freezing-ish.
It was almost that cold this morning here.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought that was like summertime temperatures for San Francisco. No?
Cute. This morning it was like 37. Literally.
Wow.
I know. But already it's 46 and it's going to get up to close to 60. Anyway, There's the weather forecast.
Right. And I mean,
we use our generative capacity to create heat in our bodies so that we don't freeze.
Yeah. Have you, I mean, I guess it's kind of from body to body, but I've had a lot of people comment how like hot I am usually, like warm even in cold weather.
He's hot.
Like that's not what I'm saying, but yeah, just like my hands don't usually get cold.
Oh.
Right? Like some people just get really like cold feet and hands.
I get cold.
I didn't know. Okay. I didn't know if that was a
men. Although it might not be specifically men, it could be certain men, but I know a lot of men have a warmer temperature.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I'm not holding hands with a lot of men, so I don't really know how that goes. Yeah, but one thing we were just talking about before we started the recording was I came across an Instagram post where somebody was talking about their like upcoming wedding, and she said, "How'd I get so lucky?" And it was such a specific reference to like access, what do I want to say, vocabulary or phraseology, like, but it wasn't even sort of in the realm of access. It was exactly how'd I get so lucky,
right?
And I was kind of like, has she been to class? I don't think I've seen her,
Yeah, and I was saying the same thing about the speech that Biden just made. Do you say made? Spoke? Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about having it's a time for possibilities, and I don't know. It's not that possibilities is an access word, but access started using possibilities 30 years ago when nobody else did. Right. And now it's becoming much more of a used term.
Well, that's something probably a year. I'm losing track of time here, but I was at a class with Max, and he said he's kind of been paying attention around the world to places that he sees kind of a shift in language and a shift in the way that people approach things, even in advertisements. And like I saw at a duty-free store in the airport, this massive sign that said, "Increase your allowance." Like, and they were talking about like your duty-free allowance for carrying out, right? But that's not what it said. It just had a big sign that said, "Increase your allowance," and it's just really fun to look for the way that those things are showing up.
It's like the dandelion seeds, they're scattering everywhere. And did you hear that story about who was it?
I think I know what you're talking about.
The thing about the dimes to diamonds,
Yes.
How does it get better than this? Yeah. Right. Who was it that's
was it like Wayne Dyer?
No. It was
Abraham.
Yes. Abraham Hicks. Like,
there you go.
Like they think it came from him, but it's the exact same story.
Yeah.
Of somebody from a class in New York that Gary was facilitating.
Yeah. And the fun thing was, like, I think that was on Facebook, and most of the comments directly after were like, "Hey, I think this is from Access. Hey, I think this is from Gary Douglas. Hey, this is from Access."
Oh, That was the class in San Francisco that you and
Yes,
I were in person.
that's the last time I think we were in the same class.
Yes,
Yeah.
gosh, that was a long time ago.
Was I just listening to that class too? I've started kind of a new project. Oh, I mean, this is a bit of a side note, but um, I've been going out, like we said, not really running, but getting active every day.
Mhm,
Um, and I'm usually listening to Access classes when I do it.
mhm.
So um, I'm going to start an Instagram account called Running with Access.
Oh,
And
cute.
it's going to be like photos of what I've done and then one or two things that I've like gotten out of that whatever time listening to class. So like 2016 COP in San Francisco, and then like something from Gary or something,
Right.
So
That's interesting because I did that yesterday when I was running in the
yeah,
woods, and I was listening to last year's Maestro.
okay,
And gosh, there were some amazing nuggets that, they go in, they blow your mind, and then
yeah,
you forget all about it. And I think I even had a lot of it written down in my notes in my phone,
right,
which is cool. But what would it take to remember to look through those notes?
yeah. I think, man, and I was listening to a class from 2015, and I mean, it's still amazing. Everybody thinks that they have to get the latest and the greatest and the best, and there is an evolution in processing. But what was it, like a year or 2 years ago, and Dane was talking about like what's possible with this that I didn't think was possible, that if I chose it. That question I think was in the 2008 facilitators manual. Like everybody thought this was like a fresh new question. And I was flipping through either reference materials or some super old manual, and I was like, wait a second, that's
Yep.
that's the new fresh thing everybody's excited about,
Yep.
that's been in my manual for 10 plus years. Like, yeah.
Yep. Well, and recently I've been looking at your point of view creates your reality, right? So if you have something that's coming up that's not changing, and you're like trying to do all this processing, you could just ask, what point of view can I change that would change
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
And not have to figure it out, because we still tend to go into figuring everything out. So I've been doing that, and and having these massive like downloads of, oh my gosh, like this is the point of view that I've been holding in place, and it just comes to you.
Yeah.
That's one of the cool. Oh, and there's this other thing, sorry.
No, not
um,
at all.
Yesterday my daughter and I were talking about wine and stuff, and Pinot Grigio and Pinot Gris, those two different wines. And
Okay.
she's like, "Oh, I wonder what the difference is." And I was like, "Yeah, I wonder if like Pinot Grigio is Italian and Pinot Gris is like French or something." So we looked it up on Google, and
Yep.
that's exactly what it was. And it just like dropped in. So asking the question and not having a point of view allows you to get all this awareness that you might not have even
Yeah.
known.
Gary and Dane have actually talked about that, where Gary will say sometimes he'll be in a conversation and then he's sort of knows a lot of things that he's like shouldn't know, or wasn't, not not like secret things, but sort of information about the topic that he had been unaware of like 20 minutes ago.
Mhm.
But like you said, the same thing, as long as you ask the question and you're out of judgment and you're like, oh, and you can receive the information, which is how it works for even questions regarding like issues in your life outside of wine differences, right? So if you're willing
Exactly.
to be an allowance and be with no point of view, then you can get an awareness of what's going on, you know.
That's the hard part, because we have such strong points of view about everything, and we've like figured out this is because of this, is because of this, is because of this. So there's all these hierarchy of points of view holding things in place.
Yeah. Just before that, I had something else. Oh, because we were talking about sort of the newest evolution in processing, and I know that for me, sometimes when I bump into an issue, I kind of go through this mental calculation of like, oh, is it a jails process, or is it like what's the most recent process to deal with this and the formula that I'm supposed to plug it in, when 9 times out of 10 it can be handled by a tool from the foundation, right? Like, it's not fancy, but it's effective. Like point of view,
Yeah.
no judgment, allowance, all of these crazy basic foundational tools, they apply to the vast majority of situations.
It really does. And when you're not trying to plug it in to a formula, and you're actually like with, let's say you're talking with a person and they have something, when you just use your awareness, you can go right in and touch that point.
Especially when you're talking with someone who's maybe unfamiliar with Access, and they're
Yes.
like, if you use some specific vocabulary, they're going to get all wrapped up in that. But we can just say like, oh, well, what would it take to change that? And that suddenly shifts them to a different angle and a different possibility. And you haven't said anything magical. It is magic, but it doesn't sound like something,
Yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed is the being that we're being that we
Mhm.
don't really notice. That is very different. I've been on a few first dates recently, and with every person, they're just like they're almost overwhelmed by just sitting with me, and I'm like, really? It's just, we're just sitting here. Um, but like the energy that we be, and you probably notice it when you go and stand, right next to Dane or Gary, and like, I know when I stand right next to Gary to ask him something, during
Mhm.
break, it's like my whole body's like, he
Right.
he bees this energy that stirs up all the molecules. Um, and I guess apparently to other people, we feel that way.
Right. Well,
So
it
you
isn't
can say
just
whatever, you cannot say anything. You
yeah.
still create magic.
Yeah, that's true. And like, one of the things that I've noticed, um, I'm just running, there's, I guess, a bunch of things related to that. But one thing is, I can like enter an empty coffee shop or an empty store. And if I sit there for 10, 15 minutes, generally there's probably 3 or 4 or 5 customers have come in that time. Like, I can go into a not busy place and then it becomes busy. And this has been like multiple times. So it's not accidental. It's not a coincidence,
Right. Yeah, my sister and I say the same thing, like when we're going to our different accounts to do our business and sell jewelry. The store is usually empty, and just by us being there, it creates more
Yeah.
business. It always
And can I
occurs.
have the money now,
Can you just
please?
stay here? Can you come visit?
Yeah. But that's so cool. And that is something I think that we don't always acknowledge. And that I've been looking at as far as um, my teaching as well, because I don't think anyone there would say there's something extra going on, or um, they wouldn't really know how to put it into words, but they really like coming to my class. But it's not necessarily like how I'm teaching or what I'm teaching. It's that they can hang out with me, right? Like you said with the dates, people just show up and they're just captivated. Is that what you said, right?
And I don't know that I use that word, but
You didn't.
it's probably a good word.
As long as they pay, right? How does that work? As a quick side note, if you meet someone for a first date, do you expect them to pay?
No, I don't have any expectations. But if they
Okay.
want to, they can. And I offer, do you want me to
Okay.
split this?
Okay. So if they don't, do you have a point of view about that?
It's more, I'm aware of their point of view.
Right. Okay. Huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you also said something about sort of access related language in a dating profile.
Oh, yeah. Some people talk about um, wanting to have somebody to contribute in their life, but still be themselves. And I don't know, just interesting things. Like they actually.
I was thinking it would be super fun if you saw a profile that's like, I'm looking for a
Creating greater
relationship done different.
possibilities. What?
I'm looking for a relationship done different.
I asked somebody, what are you looking for here? And he said the same thing you are. And I said, oh, so you're looking for a gentleman with kind eyes and a nurturing touch?
And he was like, no.
I haven't heard back yet.
Oh.
I just, trying to flip it a little and make it
Yeah.
interesting instead of, people expect you to answer questions.
Right.
And when you answer, the conversation is over.
Yeah.
So, hitting the balloon up into the air and keeping it from falling on the ground is more fun.
Right. So this is the kind of thing you want to chat about in your upcoming class?
Oh, that actually, no, it really had nothing to do with it, but there's definitely a lot that the access tools can facilitate when you're looking to date or dating or weeding people out so that you don't go through too many terrible experiences.
Right.
Yeah. So, and if it's not effective for you, there's a lot of people who have trouble with connecting with people, and there's some really simple tools that you can institute that would change that.
Yeah. Like I've noticed just asking questions. I guess I never really thought that asking questions was like a groundbreaking technique, but I've started to pay attention to how many people don't know how to ask questions. Like they don't even know what a decent follow-up question is. So it's sort of they ask you a question and then you give some information and they're like, oh, all right. And you're like, nothing? Like you got nothing from that?
I don't think that they're actually listening, paying attention, or interested. They're just trying to get to their agenda.
Right. Yeah.
They're waiting for you to say the whatever phrase so that they can go, okay, like da 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 da, whatever their agenda is.
Sorry. There's a comedian who tells a story about that where his friend asks him like, hey, what would you do if you had a time machine? But he doesn't really care what the answer is because all he wants to do is say like, well, if I had a time machine, this is what I would do.
Right.
So he was like, your answer doesn't matter because I have a more fun thing that I want to get to.
And if you don't ask that back, then they're like,
right.
Shit, how am I going to get them to ask me that question?
Right.
I actually did have somebody ask me something like that. Like, what would you like? What's your 5-year plan? And I'm like, change the world. I don't know. It's this energy. And they're like, oh, well, I'm going to buy a boat and sell my home and, sail across to whatever. And I'm like, and then what? And they go, oh, well, I don't know. Like that's my dream. And I've had that dream ever since I was a teenager. I'm like, great. What happens once you get to Australia?
Buy a bigger boat.
It's like, you might want to come up with some other dreams.
Yeah. So the first time that you encountered that sort of, what are you asking for? What would you like to create? I mean, that was a kind of confronting question for me the first time I heard that. Because it's very non-specific in terms of like, there's no dollar figure, there's no kind of car, there's no size of house attached, right?
Yeah.
And the typical response, like you said, is like, buy a boat, this much money in the bank, this many days off per year, travel here, 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 and here. Yeah. So the first time that I was asked, like, what would you like to create, or what would you like your life to look like? Like, it's such a broad question, right? And I still don't know that I have that really even nailed down, because sometimes I'm like, well, has it shifted? What am I doing? It's
Well, I guess that the way I look at it is that it's not a defined thing, it's an energy. And that's actually one of the exercises we go through in my 6-step guided transformation class,
right.
to get a sense of that energy and to really perceive it so that you can start following the energy. And that's what Gary did to create Access. And he said
Right.
that it's still the same energy today, it's just more
Right.
and bigger. But everything that he does is that energy. And you can, like, it shows up in a lot of different ways. Like the castle creation is a very different energy than the Elugar creation, but it's still this expansive sense. And it inspires people and it contributes in so many different ways. And that's just
Yeah.
him and what he wants to create.
The other interesting aspect of that is how, as you said, it's following the energy, and it's very non-linear and non-computational, because I mean, it's the antithesis of a pro and con list.
Mhm.
So when you're looking at two jobs, instead of like the salary, the location, the commute, the future potential, all of that stuff, you don't do that. You just say like, which one, and I don't even want to use the word feels, but like, which one feels better?
Well, what would your life be like in 5, 10, 20 years if you chose
Yeah.
one or the other? And even if you only had that job for 6 months, it's not about figuring out where you'd be in 5 years. It's the energetic contribution that choice creates.
I still find myself sometimes like still thinking through it though. Like yeah.
In those situations though, flip a coin.
Oh, yeah.
Because
and then when you see, yeah, I got it.
we're still trying to do right and wrong. What's the right choice? I don't want to make the wrong choice. But if you flip a coin, you'll at least know what you'd like to choose.
Yeah.
And you can choose it even if it's the wrong choice.
Yeah. But you do, like I mean, even if it's like choosing between two different kinds of cake, and you flip the coin, you're like, heads is chocolate and tails is carrot cake. And you look at it and you're like, oh, chocolate? Well, then buy the carrot cake.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you your awareness of what you'd really like instead of having to think about it.
Yeah. And one of the other questions.
Carrot cake.
No, is that bad?
No, it's funny. I just had a little carrot cake muffin or cupcake last week.
Oh.
The first time in years.
Oh.
It's just funny.
No, I have a friend and we don't eat a lot of cake together, but we sort of like periodically we'll come across a place with like a really nice cake. And anyway, that's a bit of a weird tangent. One of the other questions though, is like, what's right about this that I'm not getting? So the first time not the first time, but towards the beginning when I was using these questions, like I'm super late or I'm stuck in traffic, like what's right about this that I'm not getting? And it's interesting because I didn't always get an awareness of like what's right about this, but it did make me aware of the possibilities of like, oh, if you had been 5 minutes earlier, maybe you would have been in an accident. Or if you had been on time, maybe something else, like it's so unknown. And it allows you to get out of judgment of yourself and think like, oh, well, maybe this is the right thing. Like what's right about this thing as opposed to what I had previously decided is right. So even if you don't always get that crystal clear awareness or download of information that you might think you're supposed to get, it at least gets you out of judgment of the wrongness, right? Correct? Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. And especially because before you ask that question, you're mostly looking at the wrongness. So it lightens up.
All the time. Yeah.
There was something that happened last week. I don't know if I can remember what it was, but I just kept feeling like I was wrong about something, and it was like really heavy. And I was like, wait a second. Oh, that's heavy. Oh, it's a lie. Never mind. And it totally went away.
Nice.
So, what's right about this?
And that's one of the advanced tools that you'll get in a 7-day, right?
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, all those. And I still have to remind myself sometimes to use those.
Question.
So it's fun because we talk on Monday night, and almost every Monday morning I get my bars done. So it's like it's a nice Monday.
Nice.
I like getting my bars done.
It's good to put things that you enjoy on Mondays. Because a lot of people, half of their Sunday is ruined because they're not looking forward to Monday.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. Days.
I don't think of that anymore, but
days of the week haven't really affected me they've kind of affected me scheduling wise, like other people are only available on Saturdays or something. But as far as like this day is going to be a good day or that day is going to be a crappy day, like that hasn't really.
Yeah. Or
that hasn't really shown up
Friday.
for a while.
Like, what's a Friday?
Yeah. Everyone's like, woohoo, Friday night. I'm like, oh, that's right. It's Friday. Okay. Great. Like, have fun, everyone.
Yeah.
So
it's silly.
Yeah, it is. Well,
same with holidays.
Same with holidays. Yeah. I had a English class tonight, and we talked about how when they work holidays here, they get paid double time. The two of them that were working were telling me that, and I made a crack about like, oh, you get paid double and you don't have to see your family, and and they looked at me and they're like, oh, you're just like a Korean. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's a global sentiment. Like, I don't think that's, but they, for some reason, were like really blown away that I was aware that this was the feeling that most people have is like, if I work on a holiday, I make more money and then I don't have to deal with all the family obligations.
Perfect excuse.
Like, yeah, like, oh, grandma, I can't come. I got to work. Yeah. It's really funny though, because yeah. Anyway. But yeah, holidays also. Anyway. All right. Well, you're gonna head over to your. Yeah.
We should get some questions from our viewers and like actually speak on a topic that they want to hear about sometime. And we're just doing this meandering
Yeah.
coffee talk, but if anybody
Well, we
does
can-
have specific things, like post a question, and we will play with that, because that could be fun.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Those questions. So, all right. You're heading over to the expand page.
Yes, I am. And I have to come up with something to share. What tool shall I share?
Well, point of view is something that's kind of been up for you recently.
Yeah, I might have done that last week. I don't know.
Well,
We
I'm
shall
sure
see.
that I'm sure that it stuck and everybody remembered and they don't need to hear it again.
It's really fun how the more you let go and the less you pre-plan or think about what you want to talk
Right.
about, like this brilliance shows up. You think that you need to figure stuff out, but we're far
Yeah.
more brilliant when we're absent-minded.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Like you were saying, just be an allowance of being aware. Whether it's, what to do for Facebook or about 2 kinds of one. You got it.
Yep. All right. Well, have a great night. Sleep
Thank you.
well.
Yeah, I think I'm going
And
to get to bed.
everybody have a great day.
And yeah, we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.